Filmmaking is about making people feel less lonely. As a filmmaker, you have to first remember that you're a storyteller. Your life is going to revolve around stories of other people. And you have to make sure that you treasure them, that you take care of those stories, and you give them the space that those stories need. I really didn't know how to be a filmmaker, what it was to be a filmmaker, and I really didn't have any childhood dreams or things like that. I particularly remember one dream I had though. I always wanted to be a bus conductor when I was really small, because I liked that gadget that they used to break the ticket. Those days with CTV bus drivers, bus conductors had. So that was my passion. And then I went into wanting to become join the Air Force. And then I wanted to become somebody like Condoleezza Rice. And then I ended up getting into journalism. But I don't really remember a clear decision of this is what I wanted to be. But I loved stories. I used to listen to my grandma telling stories. I grew up with that. I grew up, my parents buying me a lot of books, reading stories and things like that. After I started writing, getting into journalism, I thought, it's really nice to listen to people's stories. So when I went to India to study, we had a bit of how do you work in television and things like that, right? So then I learned those things. I came back and I started working at Young Asia Television.
What did you study in India?
I did journalism, psychology, and English literature.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So I came and then I was at Young Asia Television. We did quite a bit of short documentaries at that time. It was mainly focused on social issues like right to information, good governance, and things like that. Then I applied for a Fulbright scholarship and I got it. And I left to do my master's at New York Film Academy. And I went there and I didn't know anything. Do I keep talking? So a lot of the classmates, we had 15 in our class, and they knew about the Hitchcocks to, the Spielbergs to how a script is written, how movies are done, and I didn't know anything. I didn't even know what a slate is. What do you do with a slate,
So your experience at NIFA, how was it?
It was great. NIFA is a place that really brings in people from all walks of life and from different cultures. It's such a diverse place to learn, and that was a great thing about it, because you would sit in a classroom and you would hear so many different stories, but there's this thing that you could connect to anyone. I remember doing the Kakuta script when I first walked into class with it. It was after a long time because I was really struggling to write the script and even coming up with the story. So when I went to class and when we read it, I remember everyone connected to it, no matter where they were from, no matter the fact that none of them have ever been to Sri Lanka, they could just relate to that story and they loved it. So I think that was great about NIFA. And the other thing is that we learned about everything. It was not just directing. We learned how to write scripts. We learned how to light. We learned how to act. We learned how to build sets. We learned how to edit, Every single step we learned. And we learned it right from the basics. So that was one of the great things. And I think the other part was also at New York Film Academy, your teachers are more like your friends, It was such a different system of education when you go after being educated in Sri Lanka to there. I always say, I hated school, but the only time that I ever loved school was when I went to film school, because I completely fit into that system. That was the first time that I ever fit in a classroom. I was now learning what I really loved learning, and there were people who would really appreciate you, and there were people who would really guide you and teach you how to grow, how to explore your talents, and not just be someone else, but to be who you are in that space. So that was like such a great experience.
So tell us about Kakuta.
Okay. So Kakuta was my thesis film when I was graduating from New York Film Academy. We were asked to do a short film between maximum of 20 minutes. The process of doing it is actually very long because we start developing scripts in October and we film the following year in the summer. So for me, I really couldn't come up with a story. I really struggled. So I came up with, I think, 2 different stories before Kakuta was written. And I wasn't happy because I felt like I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do there. And it was the piece that I was going to show now and say, hey, this is the kind of filmmaker I am. So I wanted to make something that really identified with me, you know. So finally, I really couldn't. I was going through a very bad writer's block. And I decided I was just going to come back home because I didn't want to just be a filmmaker, but I wanted to be a foreign filmmaker. I wanted to make sure that I do a movie that resonates with people who are from my cultures as well, you know, which we rarely see. So I flew back, and the night that I actually bought that ticket, I decided I wanted to do something that was very close to the ocean because I'm from Gaul, so I've been close to the ocean very much, and it's a place that I always love to, you know, go to. So I said, no, this is the kind of story that I want to do. So I came back and I was talking to my sister, and I wanted to do a story about a little boy who came from a fishing village and who really wanted a different dream other than being a fisherman. But he thought all he could be was a fisherman, you know. You know, as you start writing stories, I think it's important that you ask so many questions, you know, and you find the answers to them. That's what filmmaking and storytelling is about. When I started writing Kakuta, I realized, the question that I had was, so what's wrong in being a fisherman? You know, why doesn't this kid want to be a fisherman? Why is it so wrong? Why does he have to have a different dream? A dream that some people call big. And why is being a fisherman so small, like a small dream, you know? And then I completely turned the story around. I said, no, this is not a boy who doesn't want to be a fisherman, but who wanted to be something else. I wanted to be a boy who really wanted to be a fisherman, because you have kids who have so many stories and so many little dreams like that. But we don't really let them pursue it because we're so stuck in a frame of saying, like, these are the dreams that you need to pursue, right? So then it became a story about a 10-year-old boy who wants to be a fisherman like his father because that's the biggest hero he has in his life. And how his father, coming from a society that really has a lot of status quos, wanted his son to be something bigger than him because he felt like he was a failure. So I was back here, and then it was my sister who, she's someone who really inspires me, like the stories that she says because she travels a lot, the people she meets. So Aki and I were like brainstorming, and I dragged Arshad into it. Arshad is someone who I look up to as a storyteller. All those who came to do it volunteered to do it. And it became a family at the end, you know, we really worked hard. It was really, really exciting and tiring and everything at the same time. I look up to a lot of the independent filmmakers. My favorite is Majid Majidi, the Iranian filmmaker. He's someone who I look up to. And Alejandro, who is a Mexican filmmaker. Then Greta Gerwig. I really like Shonda Rhimes. And of course from Sri Lanka, it's Farzan Nijamuddin and Arshad Najuddin. That's it.
So why do you look up to these people? Like, what's so special? What is it?
For me, it's their storytelling. And it's mainly about how they narrate stories. And also, like, how they get their cast to be in that film, you know. When we look at Majid Majidi, for an instant, he tells stories of Iran in the backdrop of Iran. But his main focus and how he tells a story would be through a little boy. And it's as simple as that. No matter where you are in the world, you have a way of connecting to them. And I think that's what's great about great movies. You know, you should be able to have a connection. Like when you watch it, you should know like, wow, I could connect to this. I belong in this situation too. And there's somebody else who's gone through something that I went through and that I could understand.
What do you think about the film industry in Sri Lanka?
So I feel like I'm not in the industry. I don't feel like I'm a part of it.
Okay.
I feel people feel that it's a very elitist art form. So they don't really let the young people who are really talented still get into the industry because it's such a monopoly. So yeah, I think you need to open doors more. When I was looking to be a filmmaker, I never really had anyone to look up to and feel like, oh, I wanted to be this person or I can be something like this. And people don't see filmmaking as a career. They feel it's more like an expensive hobby. So I feel those who are in the industry, those who have the skills, those who have the education really needs to be out there teaching these youngsters who really want to be filmmakers, inspiring them and supporting them to take that journey. So that's where you actually start building the Sri Lankan film industry.
What are the challenges you face as a female director?
I think people don't see being a filmmaker as a female career, especially because it's a very mobile career. You always have to be on the move. It's not a 9-to-5 job. So when you are called to work, there is no time limit. So you have to constantly be on the move. That perception itself makes it a very man-made industry. And then when the men are dominant, they don't really support women into coming into the industry because they don't feel that women have the capacity and the capability to do it. The most challenging part is the attitudes and the perceptions people have towards female directors. They don't really trust that they could do the hard work, that they could carry equipment, that they could be out there telling people what to do, that you could just leave everything at home and leave to do your job. That was one of the main things. Since in Sri Lanka there aren't many women filmmakers, although there are quite a bit now coming up, we don't really have a support system that supports female filmmakers, that you could share your stories with, that you could share your struggles with, that you would have like a support system to really, really come together and work together. And it becomes difficult even with families. I mean, I've been doing this job for the past 5 years, but still when I'm out, my parents are concerned where I'm going, who I'm going with, am I in safe places, do I travel in safe transport? So I think overall it's just creating a safe workspace and creating a safe set culture for women to actually get into the industry.
So what would be your advice for someone who wants to take this route?
See, when I actually wanted to get into filmmaking, there was never a place to study it in Sri Lanka. I think now there's been quite a few in Colombo that come up that offers at least the diploma here. But what you have to know is you don't have to study it. Like you don't have to go to a film school, you don't have to go to a university to study filmmaking. It's a process of doing and learning. It's a process of growing in doing. So it's about taking the camera, going out, doing the little videos that you can do. And it doesn't have to be a fancy camera, anything. You have your mobile phones now. Go out and do shots. Learn how to frame. See it through a lens. And that's all that it matters. Listen to people. Listen to other people's stories. Absorb them. See what they go through. Empathize. That's really about filmmaking, to make that connection. If you want to be a filmmaker, I think one of the most important things is that you have to have the passion. You have to have the passion to learn. You have to have the passion to do it. Because you're going to be tired for the rest of your life if you if you become a filmmaker. You will be constantly traveling. You will not have a 9-to-5 job. You're not sitting at a desk. You'll be working with people. There are people who would always look up to you. So it's not about really going into film school or going into a university and getting a degree, It's very much to do with your skills and your commitment. And now with education being on the internet, having it as a very open source, you have a lot of accessibility to resources. You could learn script writing, you could learn lighting, you could learn cinematography, you could learn acting just by watching YouTube or just by going through online tutorials. So there are a lot of resources that people could reach. It's not confined to people who could actually afford film school. But what you have to really be passionate about is to constantly learn. Filmmaking is a never-ending learning process. No matter how much you learn, you'll always have more to learn. You'll always have people who would push you to learn and who would inspire you to learn. So it's not about just having a camera and going out there or buying the best camera, but it's knowing how to do the little things that you could do with the very little you also have. But the main thing is you have to do it. There is no other way to learn filmmaking. Write scripts. That's the only way that you're going to learn how to be a writer or a screenwriter. And you will never get it right the first time. You might just do it 120 times, 150 times. That's how every great script is actually built. It never comes the first time you do it. It's the same with doing movies. Your first movie might not do well. It might be a simple video. But it's almost like building something, Everything that you do, every video you make, every script that you write will become a brick on a larger wall that you're making or a larger temple that you're creating. But you have to keep doing it. And that's the only way you're going to learn the art. So have that dedication, have that commitment, and just go do it. You're not only a storyteller, you are also a story seeker. It's those around you, the stories that you gather, that would make you build your dreams on and take you places. So you always have to remember, as much as you have the power to mold somebody's stories into a form, that you don't mold them, but you provide them a platform and you treasure their stories on your palms and you give them the space to tell their stories. It's not going to be easy. You're going to fail so many times. There are so many times that people will reject you. There are so many times that you will not achieve your dreams. But the thing is to keep going and to keep rising every time you fall and to have faith that someday you'll reach where you have to be. And it's a wrap. Welcome to me. Okay, again. Is that a bus? Oh shit! Meet the creatives. Wait, again.